Hello all, and welcome to Essence of Wonder. I must admit, this new opening music thing had me going like, yeah, I like this. But enough about me and what I like. We have a show today that I waited for a while. I was begging. Every team meeting I would go, let's do a show about For All Mankind because it's awesome. It's the best show I've seen ever. Of course, if in a year or so, I'll say one of the best shows. In a decade, I'd say it didn't really survive, the passage of time, even though it's alternative history. But back to the show. We have wonderful guests for you today. And before we introduce them, I would like to say hello to Karen and appreciate Karen joining me once again. Hey, Karen.
Hello. I also like the new opening music. I was dancing it on our way in.
I was literally doing like...
Yeah. No. It's good that our cameras were off.
Yeah. So you haven't watched the show and you're in for a lot of spoilers. How do you feel about that?
I don't mind spoilers. In general, I very rarely mind spoilers. I sometimes seek them out. If I know that I'm not going to have a chance to read.
Eyebrows, usual location now.
Yeah, especially books. Well, I like spoilers best at the point where I've realized that I'm enjoying something, but I'm probably not going to reread it or rewatch it, which is most things. Most things you only consume once, because then I like to kind of knowing a little bit of, you get some of the joy of like a second watch or a second read during your first read, where you kind of see what the author is setting up and how, and you get to, appreciate some of the choices that the creator made, even on your first pass through.
I did ask you to see at least the very first 5 minutes.
And then I did exactly that.
And you didn't have the urge to continue?
I did have the urge to continue. I am probably going to watch the rest of it immediately after this broadcast.
Fair enough. So let's see our guests. And we're in for a treat, at least for me, because geeking out about this stuff is my kind of fun. Karen, would you like to introduce our friends?
Sure. If I can get Rob on here, I'll tell you first about Rob. We've got Rob Greene on the show today. Rob is a sci-fi author who writes, you might know him by the more search engine friendly R.W.W. Greene. But he has a book coming out from Angry Robot in August, which is the start of an alt history trilogy emerging in 2022. He lives in New Hampshire.
Yep.
Rob, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited about this. You're gonna enjoy the show, I think, Karen.
Oh, I'm I'm excited both about this show, about the show, and the show.
Yeah.
It's I was telling Gadi I'm likely to be, for various reasons, stuck on my couch for the next 2 weeks, so I know exactly what I'll be doing. And then I also wanted to introduce you guys to Helen. Helen Montgomery is with us. She is based in Chicago. She's a fan who's been involved with Capricorn since 2000, including chairing the Capricorn 29 and 30. She was an instrumental part of Chicago in the 2012 Worldcon bid and served as one of the vice chairs for Chicon 7. She's now the chair of ChicagoCon 8, the 2022 Worldcon to be held in Chicago. She's been part of the Journey Planet fanzine team for many years and has won a Hugo with them in 2015. Professionally, she's a psychiatric social worker and generally a happy geek who lives in Seattle with her partner. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And in her defense, I'll say she's been putting up with me for many a year, and she's still around.
This is true of everyone on the show, Gadi, I believe.
Okay, fair.
I'm new.
I'm an official
I'm
advisor to Gadi, so pity me.
Yeah, everyone but Rob, both in front of and behind the camera, I can say this is true. Rob, just wait.
Yeah.
All right, Gadi, you want to tell them about Alex? You saved
I do want to tell them about Alex. So first of all, I do think we need to mention that this is a new setup for us, and we are using StreamYard, which we haven't done before. We've always used Zoom. So in advance, we apologize for all the glitches and the beta stuff and the bug stuff and the feature stuff we're going to claim later as we're doing the show. So thank you for your patience. And I think this is awesome. So thank you to our tech team, Alan and Dragos, for making this happen. Alex, well, what can I tell you about Alex? Alex, what can I tell them about you? Don't answer that. I'll talk for you because I like to talk. No, Alex has been on the board of my company. He's on the board of Karen's company. I'm in cybersecurity. Karen is in... What are you in again, Karen?
Medicine?
Something in between the world of...
Wait, Alex, what field are we in?
You sit at the wonderful intersection of medicine and beauty.
Thank you.
That's exactly it. I knew that. So Alex has been on the board of both of our companies, and you can see he has a wide breadth of interests, such as these books behind him that I would like to hear more about at some point, presenting the books of Alex. But also, he likes to choose companies that are on the edge of physics, as I would like to call it. Can you tell us about some of these companies? And if the answer is no, so help me.
Yeah, there's a couple of fun ones here. One of our babies was Astra, which went public last week as the first public space launch company, and we have another one of our babies here is IonQ, which is going to be looks like the first public quantum computer company out there. So a little bit of science fiction mixed in with real life for fun.
Sounds good. I will also say you were a Harvard whiff and poof.
Oh, Harvard, yikes.
A Yale whiff and poof, fine, a Yale whiff and poof, which means you can sing. Can I embarrass you and ask for a verse? Maybe from Shakespeare?
Not at all. That is for my shower to enjoy, and no.
Okay, so let's get started. We're talking about this show. I will just say, this is the show that's going to be full of spoilers. Just full of spoilers. Prepare yourselves for that. The first 5 minutes of the show, they managed to get me to say, I know this is alternative history. The Russians are supposed to come in here somewhere, but they take you through the whole thing, and I'm saying, this looks normal. And they managed to actually get me excited, as if it's happening right now. I don't know what kind of cinematography thing happened there, but I felt this is going on right now. But then at the very end of the second season, this never happened to me, maybe because I'm not a sports fan as much, sports ball stuff, but I was grabbing my chest. Oh my God, what's going to happen now? And I was crying. These people have done on every front, from building the character arcs, to giving us the alternative history, to the cinematography, to the editing. They've just done an amazing job. It's kind of a slow burner, but it gets you there, and it's full of action and drama and everything else, and I just love this show, and I can't even describe how much. So that will be me. And we can probably go in a circle and ask people how they feel about it. How about we start with you, Helen?
So my partner, Chris, actually found the show this year when season 2 dropped. And he watched the first 2 episodes without me. And then the next morning he was like, so you really need to see this show. And it hooked me, just like you said, within the first, 5-10 minutes. I didn't know anything about the show before I started watching it. I had no idea what was going to happen. And just that initial moment where the astronaut on, like you said, it seems like the moon landing we've always watched, and then suddenly the astronaut starts speaking Russian, and I was just like, whoa, okay. And I love it. It's an amazing show, fantastic acting. I just love everything they're doing with it.
Rob.
I think one of the things that the filmmakers did very intelligently is they did a lot of those first 5 minutes on Walter Cronkite, the anchor of CBS News at the time. And Walter Cronkite historically only broke twice. He broke when Kennedy was assassinated, and he broke when the moon landing happened. So, he was the most trusted man in America at that point. He was, he kept it very calm during the entire thing. So I think by looking at Walter and kind of taking our cues from Walter Cronkite, he was as excited historically for the fact that someone was going to land on the moon as he was that an American was going to land on the moon. And I think that's why you had that, what's going on? This seems very normal, because we were taking our cues from CBS News and Uncle Walt. But in general, I think the show has been fantastic. There's a 3rd season coming up. They're jumping about a decade every single season. I love the kind of geopolitical stuff behind it. The history. This is kind of my history. I was born in '71, so this is kind of my time period of really being interested in history. So I was thoroughly geeking out at every moment during those 2 seasons.
I guess that leaves you, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't start watching this until the 2nd season kicked off, and heard everyone raving about the first one. When I found out that it was a Ronald D. Moore show, that made it pretty easy for me to dive in, obviously, from Battlestar Galactica land, which was wonderful. And you'll see a lot of those fingerprints all over the show in terms of the style of shooting and things like that. But one of the things that just made me fall in love with this show is the amount of really geeky, nerdy detail that is just all over this show, be it from some of the technical pieces and the physics of how outer space, really works, that I know is really fun to see on screen, but also so much fun with a really loving, caring attention to the history and the people through the space race and the NASA program, who in some cases play the exact role that they played in real life. In other cases, they're playing slightly different roles than they may have in history. And you could just, sense this love that the writers and showrunners had about finding these beautiful little details of history and pulling them in kind of surprising and interesting ways. So there's a lot to dig into.
It's interesting to me how it's kind of, I've never seen this. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen. The trick of a romance novel, you know what's going to happen. You know how it's going to end, but then is it actually going to happen that way? And if it does, what are they going to do to get us there? And throughout the show, every time there was something happening, I was like, I know what's going to happen next. There is going to be a manned landing. And how are they going to handle that? Right? What is it going to be, the Russians again? What's going on? And that kind of tension that just kept building in a way that I've never seen before. And the other thing,
my entire argument for why spoilers are okay. You're making the argument that even though you know how it's going to end in a few
you should
facts,
just feel shame, Karen, for not watching
Right.
this yet. Although I think all of us started after the second season. This first season came out. I was quick enough to finish this before the last episode or last couple episodes of the second season actually came out.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like a whole week of the show and then waiting 2 days and one more.
Well, there's a weird scenario in this situation. The Americans are the underdog. The Russians beat us into orbit. The Russians beat us with Sputnik. The Russians beat us to the moon. So, we've already got 3 strikes against us. So, there's a point in the show where they're saying, well, if this doesn't work, we're done with the space race and we're going to yield the, space to the cosmonauts. And that's just something that, it's really interesting to look at in terms of, Americans' idea of exceptionalism and, what we see of ourselves. It's almost like, losing Vietnam. Losing Vietnam was kind of our big first failure. But if we'd had our big first failure on such an international stage 3 or 4 years earlier, what would it have done to the country? It's just it's fascinating in terms of political science and sociology.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've found, so with the alternate history, watching what's happened socially in the show has been a big thing for me. Like, that's one of the things I've really enjoyed. So, not only did the Russia get everybody to the moon first, but then they got women on the moon first. And so suddenly now we have to have women astronauts. And it's about halfway through season 1 that the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment, passes overwhelmingly and super easy, right? And it's all because of that. And whereas in our timeline, right, it still hasn't passed.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's really
the social aspects of it are fascinating to see how the changes in history and how they're having that change things in history. But on the other hand, like things around the rampant homophobia of that time and tying it into the Red Scare and everything, like none of that has changed in the show, just only certain social aspects.
Well, I think one of the things that's so amazing there is that they're not taking a lot of this, alternate history progress that they've put in there. They're not taking it totally from a blank slate or scratch. Like there really were a group of women who were trained alongside the Mercury astronauts. They never got to fly, and actually now, with Bezos launching, what is it, next week or something, he's actually taking one of these women who never made it to space up on that first flight. But what's so fascinating to me is that so many of these interesting nuances or interesting social perspectives that they take in the show have a lot of anchoring in reality. Obviously, also, we've seen a lot of the fascination with hidden figures a few years ago. Obviously, with Mary Robinette Kowal's Lady Astronaut series, this is a natural extension of some of those stories, but it is actually anchored in that ounce of reality that really could have been if just a couple of things would have been different.
Yeah.
One of the things, the show goes deep on every aspect. For example, at the beginning, I just did not understand the all astronauts' wives arcs. I just didn't get it. How is this relevant to the story? It seems completely cut off. Like the little girl from Mexico. Okay, that's fine, but how is that related to the whole story? And they tie everything together.
Mhm.
None of the characters, I believe, maybe I'm missing somebody, is the same. Even the secondary characters, like what's his name in the control room, they are not the same people by the end of season 2.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes so deep. In one scene, just one scene at the very end of season 2, the Russian KGB is sitting in front of the Russian head of their NASA. Forgive me for forgetting the names. And he says, she's already working for us. She just doesn't know it yet. That one scene of just a few seconds was one of the best I've ever seen, like as a presentation on how intelligence works. They just go deeply into things, and it goes so easily for them. I wonder how much work they actually put into it.
Well, both the depth there, but I think you also brought up just the great point, and I'm going to love to hear everyone's thoughts on it. They did such a masterful job of character development in both seasons here. In so many, again, you point out, the depth factor, but in really interesting, unexpected ways. And one of the drumbeats that they just nailed over and over again was taking characters that you liked, making you get some good reasons to not like them, and maybe redeem them, or maybe don't redeem them, and also do the reverse really well. There are some people who are just assholes on the show, and your first impressions of them are frequently terrible, but eventually become better. I mean, even some of the main characters, like Ed, starts out as a hero. By season 2, he's sort of the asshole NASA administrator guy who's bullying people around, and comes back to be a hero at the end. And it's almost like every one of these characters is.
By the way, that was one of my biggest disappointments. At the very end, they're in space. They're in the shadow of the moon, the back of the moon, whatever you want to call it, the moon's backside. And we know the Russians are waiting. We know there is going to be a fight. We absolutely do. There might not be. They've surprised us before. And then they pull a Star Wars. Like this amazing, female astronaut is saying, no, this is wrong. I'm not going to let you do this. She pulls a gun. I'm going to shoot you. It's a mutiny.
And which female astronaut is it, Gadi? So that's the best punchline of it all. Sally Ride. I mean, Sally Ride coming back as like a space shuttle astronaut with a gun on the space shuttle.
Yeah.
So I did not recognize that reference. I'm going to have to Google it.
Yeah.
But the point for me is it's the same as, once again, in the new movies, not telling the people you command what your plans are, and therefore putting everybody at risk. And he says, you shoot me if you want. I'm going to do whatever I want. Being all macho, and she's being all macho, and she's like, I need to do this. You can see the struggle. It's an amazing moment. They built so hard. And then he pulls the triggers and blows their own spaceship out of the sky, thus disarming the conflict. For me, I was like, even shooting going to just appear to be aggressive and they're going to get shot out of there anyway? I was worried about that from a human perspective. But then you could have just said, no, I got this. Trust me. We're going to explode Dragonfly or whatever it was called. But no, that didn't happen. There are points of disappointment, like, why are Americans' guns, the M16s, white, and why does that protect them from the sun, and why are the Russians not? There were points where I was going like, what's going on? But
they're a little glib with some of the historical stuff, like John Lennon lives. Why? The Pope dies. Why? Was that caused by the Russians landing on the moon? No, that had nothing to do with it. But it makes a handy thing for Lennon to do peace concerts and that kind of stuff. But there's no connection as to why Lennon would live. John Lennon would live. There's no connections, So they play a little hand wavy, kind of fast and loose stuff. You notice that every time they go into Jamestown, the moon base, gravity seems to work okay. but it doesn't work on the surface of the moon. So it's not a perfect show, but I think it's close enough to make it a good show, and maybe one of the best kind of outer space shows we've seen in quite some time.
Yeah, some of the history is that they've changed is interesting. Like one of the ones that I found fascinating, and I love what they do with stock footage from the time, and how they basically deep fake it to make it, but you're watching.
Yeah, it's very Forrest Gump. It's very Forrest Gump.
Yeah,
right. The Nixon voice is
like,
fantastic.
The Nixon voice is amazing, but the fact that Chappaquiddick never happened, and Ted Kennedy went on to become president, right? Like.
Because of the Russians, obviously, right? Yeah.
Well, because he left to come back because of, I forget which particular crisis it was. Maybe it was when I think it was when Apollo 11 crash landed on the moon or something like. So he actually left to come back to DC for that, and therefore that's why Chappaquiddick didn't happen. So yeah, but yeah, some of the stuff like Lenin and what is. Sorry, Karen. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was thinking that one sounds like it makes a little more sense. It's at least related.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why the Lenin one, other than it's kind of cool.
They do have some in there. They do have some there that are more related directly to the plot. Actually, the first, I don't know, it's maybe like the first 5 minutes or so of season 2. It's sort of like a newsreel, an alt history newsreel of what's happened. That's where they point out that Lenin's still alive. The assassination attempt on the Pope in the Vatican actually was successful, and the Pope got killed. But they point out some other interesting ones that are more tied into what we've seen. They point out that like 3 Mile Island gets averted because of nuclear technology that they developed for Jamestown on the moon.
In the second season, I was waiting for the AIDS crisis to kick in at some point in time, because we talked a little bit about this, about how Reagan kind of gets a pass as kind of like, hey, I did peace and I was a nice guy. Without fatherly figure, and he also became president in this 4 years early, so he probably missed the whole Iran-Contra thing, and we missed out on that kind of stuff. But he's going to be forever a villain in my mind because of the fact that he fiddled and ignored the AIDS crisis, which could have played a role in this, because the head of NASA is a beard for a guy working for Lockheed Martin, who is, he's out there, having relationships with men at a time when that kind of thing was fraught. And what if you brought that home? So there's a lot of kind of like historical stuff that they could have pulled in that they didn't. And as a result, they kind of whitewashed, a person who I think is one of the great villains of the 80s, Ronald Reagan.
I'm going to be really curious to see. So I don't know if you've seen on the website for it. Oh gosh, I have to sneeze. Hang on. Or not. On their website, they have some of the alternate history events that took place between season 1 and season 2, where you can watch the footage. And I'll be very curious to see what they add for going in between seasons 2 and 3. And will any of that stuff, like the AIDS crisis and all of that, be covered in that, right? Because clearly we're going now just based on the music, because they're using Nirvana at the end, right? And so clearly we're jumping into the 90s. And so I'll be very curious to see what do they change history-wise, and what do they acknowledge in that sort of between the seasons stuff that they do.
Well, I also love they incremented some of the technology from in the direction of reality, but a notch beyond reality between season 1 and 2. At the end of season 1, we see sort of one of the final scenes, the Sea Dragon launch taking Jamestown base, the first moon base, reactors and whatever off. And the Sea Dragon, by the way, was a real rocket that was designed. They never launched, never flew it. But it was designed back in like 1963 or something. They said we could build the biggest rocket in history and launch it from underwater, and there's no reason we can't do it. Similarly, in that newsreel at the beginning of season 2, they talk about the Soviets launching an N3 rocket. Well, the N1 was their, the Soviet answer to the Saturn V boosters. They never made it off the launch pad, really, but here we have them advancing. I was kind of hoping that as they jumped into the 80s that we were going to see a slightly different space shuttle, to be honest, because there's a rich history of everything that NASA looked at before the space shuttle, and there was a bunch of really, really neat spaceships that we never got to see. And I was going, come on, just give us one of those. But alas, we didn't get one.
One of the coolest things, smartest things they did, kind of like as a small thing, was finding out a way for NASA to be fiscally independent.
I know.
So, they're talking about within 10 years, we'll have, we won't have to get any money from the government. And this is by allowing them to license all the patents and the technology they developed en route to some of these things, which in real life didn't happen. But, imagine, as the show has, if it had, and that allows them to do things like the Sea Dragon. And, I can't remember what, I refer to Ed as Altered Carbon because that was the last thing I saw him in. So when the new improved atomic shuttle that Altered Carbon is flying at the end, that was something that was the Pathfinder. There was also in the books. And if there was a way to, avoid having NASA go through all that congressional budgeting thing, imagine what they could have done.
Honestly, I was a little bit disappointed by all of that because back then, I'm not sure what economists say about today, for every dollar invested in a space program, 8 were made. They were, the government budgeting thing, of course, is a problem. But I would like to shift gears a little bit. I would like to touch base on some of the truly horrifying, cringy moments that were probably 100% correct historically, such as the interviews for women in the first episode, or was it the second one?
Oh, yeah.
I was like, like that.
Yeah. It's one of the things that, like, I think, Alex, you were saying, right? They have done just such an amazing job with the characters and the writing that they're expressing stuff that was normal at the time, right? I mean, that's how things were. And yet you don't hate the characters for it. Like it's just it's such an amazing balance that they've struck with that. But yeah, the interviews with women, all the interviews with Ellen and Larry about homosexuality and how that's such a horrible thing that the Russians could exploit them, and
But then at the end they were also right. Not about the homosexuality thing being bad or taboo or any of that, but whether it was exploited. And I feel if it was acknowledged and in the open, it couldn't have been exploited, right? They acknowledged a certain problem, they made it much bigger than it is and caused their own issues. But then again, there are things that kind of piss me off. I look at this, as a friend calls it, Stephen Kellner, if anybody knows him, maybe Ellen, as competence porn. Anything in NASA is competence porn, and I enjoyed it tremendously. But then sometimes they were a little bit lazy, and they would add something into the plot that makes zero sense from a competence perspective. For example, constantly hiding personal things in order for NASA not to find out and kick them out of the program. Now, I can see why they would want to hide the personal things, such as, for example, being gay. Makes sense for the time. But oh man, my friend is completely drunk and he's gonna hold the lives of 4 other people in his hands, but I'm gonna let him fly anyway because he's my friend. I just don't see that happening.
Chuck Yeager, when he broke the sound barrier the first time, had a broken arm. He went out horseback riding the day before, broke his arm. He had a friend of his had to rig a broom handle so he could pull the cockpit of the plane closed. So he broke the sound barrier, made history. When he really, really, really should not have flown. So there is a precedent for that kind of thing.
Well, the same thing that, on Jamestown, they have all the alcohol up there, right? That there's the guy who's making booze. I think when Ellen leaves Jamestown, one of the last things she does as she's relieved of duty is like handing over the keys to the liquor locker. And there's good precedent in here. And if you poke around in books and online, the official NASA stance is that there's absolutely no alcohol in orbit right now. We've heard from
you're gonna put a bunch of scientists on the moon, and you think they're not gonna build
They
a
can't
still?
figure out how to make
You see all these great interviews with astronauts and cosmonauts, and they're like, "Oh yeah, there's some brandy, there's some vodka that makes it up there. There's something in the corner. Everyone's excited for what they snuck up."
Another thing I just couldn't understand. Sorry, go ahead, Alex.
No, I was saying, it's great little details like that you actually want to think are maybe far-fetched, but are more real than I think we give credit for.
It's kind of.
I love the ants.
Dragons of Wonder points out they're auctioning off wine from the International Space Station right now.
Awesome. As I say, I love, it's such a tiny little detail, but I love the whole thing with the ants at Jamestown. That early on, when they were up there, they had an ant colony and it broke, and so ants managed to escape, and it comes back later, right? And the ants are still trucking around doing their ant thing, and I just thought that was just such a little thing, but I don't know, it made me giggle immensely when it happened. So
okay, let's take it to the really interesting place. Go ahead, Alex.
No, I was going to say, one of the fun things with the ants, just connecting back into some of the fun character stuff, is obviously Gordo ends up like seeing the ants everywhere and whatnot. Just one of the most fascinating, treatments that they've chosen to do on the show is to keep re-exploring what would be the trauma of these astronauts going to space, going through the program, and they treat it in this way that I think we normally only see this in fiction through soldiers coming back from a war and going through some amount of PTSD or trauma for whatever, and we see numerous characters have to live through and process the trauma of being in isolation and having your friends die in the pursuit of exploration, of having losing your kid while you're away on another solar body or whatever. And these are actually real things that are probably going to happen more and more as humanity keeps going out there, but they treated it in such a soldier coming back from battle and struggling way.
The psychiatric social worker in me absolutely freaking loved it. But you were talking about character development and the character arcs and stuff. Karen, Ed's wife. Oh my God, that performance is just a tour de force at the end of it when, because she's down on Earth trying to hold it together while Ed is stuck up there and their kid gets hit by the car, and her performance during those 2 or 3 episodes was just some of the best, I think, acting I've seen in ages.
So this is actually where I want to take this. I want to talk about the 2 best characters on the show that I had no faith in to begin with. And that's essentially Sarah Jones as Tracy Stevens and Chantel Van Santen as Karen Baldwin. I think they are the ones who actually made the show happen.
I mean,
I loved the Tracy and Gordo arc. I thought that was I loved that arc.
But by the way,
I don't know what I'm going to do without them, honestly. That was so brave. It was so fucking brave to remove those characters.
To kill
from
them
the show.
off, yeah.
It's just, sorry, Karen, you're done with that. Now.
But kill them off. But again, a lot of people don't realize they're actually, both characters are based on real people. There was an astronaut that was, I think it was Gordon something, and he had a wife. I don't remember the wife's name, but his wife was an accomplished pilot. And she sort of broke, she bucked the trend of all of these astronaut wives who are there to, stand around and look pretty and be, America's sweethearts. She obviously never became an astronaut in real life, but I love how they go back and like, we're gonna farm something real to create that.
Although that's something they abandoned pretty quickly as well. They started with, we are holding the line. We are astronauts' wives. You take care of her. I'll do this. I'll do that. Oh my God, that person is here. What do we do now? Smile and nod. And they broke that completely. They just left it behind within a few episodes. And I honestly can't comprehend the shift the characters have gone through by the end of the 2nd season. Although honestly, speaking of Karen, I can't get behind the
cringe.
The thing in the 2nd season.
Oh yes.
That was awful.
I just don't get it.
Like, no,
It's a midlife crisis. But
it goes so fast. Everything has been so
You
slow.
saw the freight train coming for like an episode or two.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm reading between the lines too much here.
Yeah.
And then there's a certain underage kiss. No, I guess not an underage.
They knew this was going to be bad, and they foreshadowed it, like shouting off the Eiffel Tower, and then they did it.
Yeah, but we've seen that kind of thing with a guy for years. You know, the guy with the midlife crisis, the younger lover. You know, now they've just kind of turned the table because that's what she's got right now. She's in a midlife crisis. You know, she's.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but piecing it together, I think I support this.
She's truly the best character.
The reason you never see women get these storylines.
Yes.
It happen.
You don't. But I guess the thing for me is I didn't. Yeah, she's having that midlife crisis, but I didn't. It didn't feel like it fit with the rest of her storyline to me.
Well, she's smoking pot. She's hanging out with the artist guy. You know,
she's hanging out with Wayne.
She just sold her business, and like there's this younger guy.
She's going to PTSD on her own, also.
Right,
I think.
and there's this younger guy who reminds her of her husband back when he was young, and like
But she saw this little kid as a baby.
I know.
Literally,
it's a friend of your
was his second mother.
Right?
He was more his mother than his mother.
Best friend.
And he grew up in your house because the other one was actually an
I think if it had been like random wait staff boy at the bar,
I'd be more okay.
That would have been okay.
Actually. There's a lot of, we talked about this with Shannon McGuire when she was on the show, but like there's about how she made various characters related to prevent people from writing too much fan fiction about.
And then she told us about Twincest, and we have forever been changed.
Right, but he's also got Gordo's charm. You know, he's Gordo's kid, and Gordo's very charming and very winning. I didn't cringe. It kind of made sense to me.
Well, can we also talk about with the time jump? And actually, they did a pretty good time jump. I think we've all seen a lot of really terrible time jumps that happen. But I found it so funny that they aged everyone in the cast pretty well.
And they still look younger.
Karen. Karen, at some point later on, I'm like, you still look like you're in your 20s, lady.
Right.
Like everyone else, like Gordo, by the way, the actor who plays Gordo really did put on all the weight.
Gained 40 pounds for that and lost it in the same damn season. Yeah.
Amazing. But and everyone else, they did the makeup right, they did the hair right. It really looked it. And for whatever reason.
The thing is, look at her decisions even before that.
Med spas.
Yeah, that's right.
No, but look at the other decisions. For example, your husband. So earlier we spoke about the characters and how much we get into this. We feel the PTSD. We feel what's going on. We connect with them. But then, so I told this story once before on the show, I believe. There used to be a book taught at West Point called Lee's Lieutenants. And it goes through the Civil War, and it teaches a lot about strategy and leadership. But it was dropped off the curriculum because other books were found that also took the side of the soldiers and told us about how war is. And I kind of appreciated that to 80% degree. And the thing is, they do also bring the strategy. Living through one of these moon crises just felt whatever.
Crises.
Okay. Felt almost like I was in the room where it happens for the Cuban Missile Crisis. They were so good about all these things. But then they bring it back to character again. And we see Karen standing in front of her husband as he's about to head into space to the most intense moment imaginable. And she says, yeah, I don't remember exactly what it was. I cheated at you, it's over, bye. Or something else. I don't remember what it was again. It was something different. But she just drops this bomb on him as he goes off into space.
Yeah, but
he was the one who pushed her to tell him.
Yeah.
He kept pushing. She was like, we'll talk about it when you get back. We'll talk when you get back. We'll talk when you get back. And he's like, no, I must know now. And she's like, fine. I slept with some other guy. And then he's like, what? Oh.
Sorry,
maybe we should have talked about that when I got back.
I don't know. It just felt like she was the most calculated of all characters. And even if she got freed up and she does, she goes to Wayne, Molly's husband, and does drugs with him and everything and gets loose a little bit. Still, she doesn't change except in those specific moments.
Yep.
Right.
And I just can't believe these changes.
Yeah. That scene didn't ring true for me either. That she was smart enough and savvy enough that she would have come up with another reason for being off. I'm just sad you're going to leave or something like that. That would have been fine. But that didn't. But for us watching, it gave us the drama, even though it was kind of artificial for the character.
Yeah. I mean, she's one of those exceptionally competent women, though. Like she knew her job, like especially in the first season, right? She knew her job as an astronaut. I mean, that was her job, and she did it spot on, right? And we talked about the sort of the competence porn of the people working at NASA, but she's just as competent. Like the social dynamics she navigates, and it was just brilliant, brilliantly done.
Well, some other characters that we haven't really talked about yet that I think also just had amazing and interesting journeys are both Margot, going from lowly technician who's sort of been under the wing of Werner von Braun up to running NASA. That's
through blackmail.
Oh yeah, through blackmail. Yeah,
but again, just amazing development.
I honestly couldn't connect with her. It's not about mental what's the word they use in the States for people with other mental states or other mental
neurodivergence?
Yes. No, wait, say again?
Neurodivergence?
Yes, thank you. Neurodivergence, exactly. So she's, I believe, not an expert, neurodivergent. Okay. And maybe yes, maybe no, but I think she's somewhere on the spectrum as a person who doesn't understand anything. And seeing her succeed, seeing her navigate was extra interesting to me because most of my friends are, maybe even I am, right? Never got diagnosed. And it's just incredible that they added the political layer to a person who was neurodivergent, or could be. I'm taking that back step. And that's another layer. They don't feed you too much of it, but every few episodes they give you a little bit of the politics to support what's going to happen and go to a strategic standpoint. They have everything in there.
Right. Well, she's focused on her job, and the only time she becomes vulnerable is when she reaches out. So she only becomes.
So I'm really sorry for cutting you off for a second, but I see Ellen disagreeing with me there, and.
Or... Oh no! No, go ahead. Let Rob finish. And
okay,
then,
go ahead, Rob. Sorry.
Well, I mean, she loves her job. She loves her math. She loves her science. She loves her physics. She doesn't see a reason for a husband or whatever. She lives in her office. This is just what she does. And the only time she becomes vulnerable is when she has a relationship. She has a relationship with Sergei, the Russian, and that makes her vulnerable to the KGB and the spies. She has a relationship with Alita, who is the young Mexican girl, and that hasn't hit her in the backside yet. But I'm sure at some point it will. But it's only when she takes her eyes off kind of like her prize is when she becomes something that could be attacked.
And so one of the things that I find really interesting about that is I don't know that I really saw her as neurodivergent in any way, but what I saw her as, she came into the STEM field, right, as a woman, and she couldn't be, she had to be one of the guys. And her performance is very traditionally male and very traditionally masculine. Yeah. And like you said, it's only when she suddenly allows herself to, whenever she allows herself to do something that's more traditionally feminine around a relationship, that's when it causes problems. And that was how, I didn't interpret her as neurodivergent. I interpreted it more in that way. But
I totally agree with you. And your point around her playing more masculine. There's an amazing scene I think it's the beginning of the second season or something, when she's now the administrator or the head of Johnson Space Center. And she's been sleeping in her office, and you get to watch her wake up. And it's she's at the top of the game, but she's still sort of grinding that hard. And she, folds up the couch bed in the office. She tidies up. She's, brushing her teeth in her office bathroom. And the last thing she does as she puts herself together is realize that her fly is down. And she zips it back up. And it's this weird sort of masculine, funny moment of oh, this is what it takes. At that time for her to go and be, the boss lady, because there was no one really like her before.
It's amazing you guys mentioned that right now, because I'm thinking to the beginning, I still saw her as odd, but she was feminine in her dress, even though it was professional and for the time. And I think it kind of escalated. She became more and more masculine and things moved on. But then that's my take on it now. I'll have to rewatch. But I also think about the real moments. For example, one of the most real moments she ever faced was going to von Braun's house years later. And I did not see a different speech pattern. I did not see a different stance. It was still rigid. It was still, so even when those moments happened, there was still something there that was a little bit off to me.
Okay.
Possibly. I'd have to go back and rewatch.
But let's move on to the best characters of the show that I honestly thought would be the worst characters of the show. except for Karen, of course. Any guesses?
Can we talk about Molly?
I love
Oh wow,
I love
really?
Molly. I
Okay,
love
let's go for
Molly.
Molly then. Let's go for
Molly's
Molly.
amazing.
Also,
I
speaking
love
of masculine
Molly.
and feminine, and there's the big joke up front, it's like, she's got to be a lesbian.
Yeah.
And she's like, surprise. No, she just happens to be, a kick-ass pilot.
Yeah.
And what a fun character.
Yeah.
Oh, she's great. She's
I
great.
had trouble with Molly, and I tried to analyze that. I actually stopped for a while and tried to analyze what my problem with Molly was. And because also, I think she's not the most awesome character. I'm sorry. There's a couple there, the Astro couple, and that's the best characters, period. I know it's kind of childish of me. But I think it wasn't because she was older than them. It wasn't because she wasn't as pretty as Sarah, right? It's kind of Tracy Stevens. It's kind of, for me, because she kept, on purpose, I think, disrupting the social scenes or the social dynamics of things. And that threw me off consistently. I just didn't know what to do with that.
Oh, see, that's what I loved.
Well, it also,
I love that she got in there and she was like, "Nah, I'm totally gonna mess with the social hierarchies and the whatever." I'm not.
that and the competence porn point, she got away with all of it because, hot damn, she was really competent. She was just better than all of them at what her job was.
Mm-hmm.
She could take that and leverage that in this way to say, yeah, I'm going to mess with all the social dynamics here because I dare you to disqualify me for any reason. Even when I'm going blind, like, you can't disqualify
Right.
me. I'm still that good.
And then contrasting her with Danielle, right? Who also super competent, but when you put the race piece in there, she didn't do as much of the disrupting overtly.
Yeah. Well,
and I thought that was really
complexity, right? We see her have to go through and actually navigate so challengingly both sides of the, are you the token Black female astronaut?
Right.
And she's first like, no, but this is an opportunity that no one else, it's important for me to be the token Black astronaut here. And then we see her evolve over time and start saying, like, I need to ask for things now because this isn't doing justice for me. And that was amazing.
It's really interesting kind of looking at it I'm sorry.
I was just agreeing with
I just think it's really interesting to look at the whole show on a scale of isms, because, what gets broken first? Women are ERA, women in space, and it takes longer for racism. And then finally we've got, homophobia, or heterosexism or whatever it is that we've got coming up, which is kind of like the next or maybe the last ism to fall. So it's just kind of when you look at society and you realize, like, this is the way we've kind of set up what we don't like. We don't like women, we don't like people of color, we don't like gays, and it's all about, like, where are we going to, like, start to moderate? And we started moderating with the women, and then finally the people of color, and then maybe in the 90s, we'll see that last ism fall.
Well, and that's a mirror of our timeline, right? Women got the vote, and and I mean, it's like, and then the Civil Rights Act and then with Stonewall, and then I mean, the gay marriage stuff was not that long ago, so again, it mirrors our timeline. But I'll be really curious.
There's also a good otherism that they're sort of navigating with the enemies, right? And the bad guys, the evil Russians, and we have numerous points through the show where you can't help but, maybe there's a little bit of intelligence manipulation going on there, Gadi, for sure. But we also find characters, it's like, wait, you can separate out the people from this big conflict. And we see it a couple of times. It's like that Sting song, Russians, it's like, the Russians love their children too, or whatever. It's like, wait, these people become friends, they become allies, all these things, despite whatever mess is going on between the governments.
And this is what's amazing also strategically. So there is this documentary I love called The Fog of War, where McNamara in his later days goes through these 11 tenets of strategy or keys to strategy or whatever it is. And one of them was empathy. Right, in the very beginning of the show, we had the Iron Curtain. You didn't know what was going on with the Russians. You just didn't know. And slowly you started meeting them in the Fog of War. McNamara shares, look, we went into this war. and it was X and Y. And then in the 90s, after the fall of the Soviet Union, the most senior people on both sides met, and we both asked ourselves, the first question we both asked each other was, why did you start the war? Because we wanted nobody to own us. We wanted to be on our own. Russians, we don't care. The others, we didn't want you to join the Soviet bloc. You could have had what you wanted. But there was no empathy, and there was no chance of empathy.
Yeah.
And then the opening of empathy leads to the spying. So it's a full arc, and I love that they go throughout the detail-oriented and the higher-level approach and everything together, and they do it wonderfully. But let's talk about Tracy.
Well, I'm just going to say the opening of empathy when they were talking about the dog. That also led to, the Apollo Soyuz actually happening. Without that moment of empathy, shared concern about the dog, that wouldn't have happened either. So it was both a strength and also a vulnerability.
So
I
let's
think we
talk
about
Tracy
Tracy and
Stevens.
Gordo now to get Gadi.
We do. Gordo is it's amazing how much that person went through and still stayed the same person. He's acting completely different now. Is a changed human being, and yet he still acts according to the same tenets in the same ways with the same communication style. And I personally love that. Also, of course, Helen will come in and say, "Well, Gadi, actually." But Tracy Stevens, I don't even know where to start.
I mean, what a fun arc. Just so many fun things in there. Going into season 2 where she becomes a celebrity and is on like the Johnny Carson show and is standing there at it. It's like, this is a successful female astronaut who's, gone to the moon and whatever. And here she is in a on a sound stage in a fake spacesuit doing a watch, ad. And just how hilarious, just amazing. And it's like, and then to make her career come back, she needs to go back to the moon, right? I love it.
Yeah, she needs to be able to do more in order to keep going, right? Her celebrity star will fade unless she can add to it. So, and she ended up doing the thing that will keep her known for forever, right? Being one of the people who saved the base.
I'm crying right now. It's really, it was such a scene.
It was amazing. Yeah.
I mean, I keep recommending this show, and I get mad at my friends that don't talk to me afterwards. How dare you? Because I want them to call me after that particular scene and tell me I stopped breathing. That's all I want to hear.
I mean, again, it's always right when we just see this all the time. I mean, look at obviously the books came first, but think of a lot of people coming to Game of Thrones for the first time in season 1 and how essential it is, critically essential it is that Ned Stark dies at the end of season 1. I hope I didn't just spoil that for anyone who's somehow, a decade.
I think that's fair game.
There's and by the way, we also saw this back with another Ronald D. Moore show, Battlestar Galactica, of a willingness to say we are going to go and either kill people or make certain people surprisingly the bad guys after a certain point.
Except for Starbuck.
Except for Starbuck, who's always perfect. Come on.
In the Pale Moonlight, I think it's season 7, episode 8, but I must be mistaken it. Everybody must remember that. Have you all seen DS9? Nod your heads.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. There was an episode when they kill a Romulan senator and kind of do it together with the Garak in a spyish kind of way. And at the end of the episode, he just says, "I can live with it. I can live with it." Right? Or this or whatever. So they have been really good at looking at shades of various shades of darkness there in DS9 as well. But the fact that we had I just can't get away from the character development no matter what I do. Looking at Tracy Stevens, I started liking Gordo more and more. I started liking her less and less. And they kind of came back together, being true to what the show is about. And I just don't know if it was the cinematography, me knowing these characters for so long. When they were running in space, I honestly believed they're both going to live. I couldn't see a world in which they die. And I can't imagine a show without them. I just can't. I'm not saying it won't be a show without them.
It's so important, so excited that they killed both of them, because going forward, it gives that excitement to audience, right? Because no one is safe. Those were
Right.
two central characters, and maybe one of them was going to live, one of them was going to die. Like, no, we're going to kill them
Kill 'em
at
both.
the same time. Amazing choice.
Although they did
It
do
was a great, and it was a practical choice in some ways, right? Because we're jumping forward another decade. And so how do you age the character, right? I mean, there's the really practical point of, okay, we've got to age these people now, 30 years or what, or 25 years from when we first saw them. So there's definitely some practicality there. But it was, I think, a really bold choice and an amazing way to end the show.
All right, we're moving into the last few minutes, and so I want to turn it to, what are you hoping to see in the next season?
I'm willing to be surprised.
We're on Mars. That's just going to be, and I can't wait to see who's up there. Like we don't know who we saw at the end, and who is that going to be? And I can't wait to find out in the first episode of how did we get there and who it is.
I actually can't wait on other things. Like I forget the name of the character right now, and I feel really bad. They brought two characters more to focus in season 2. It's foreshadowing, I think. One was we have a black female astronaut, and another was we have a female head of NASA.
Yeah.
Right? And I felt that was foreshadowing. That wasn't actually a story arc yet. And I really want to see what they do with that, especially when we have one under the thumb of the Russians, unless she decided to leave.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just because of that, because she was always very straightforward.
Right. Well, Ellen's going to run for Congress, right?
Really?
Yep.
Yeah.
I didn't even see that.
Yeah. Ellen's well. That was there was his name. Lee Atwater was there having dinner with her husband and
with Larry,
with Larry, and saying, "Hey, we can make her the first female president."
Larry!
And that's what
Larry is the most underrated.
Larry's pretty good. He's a great husband. He's very supportive. He knows exactly what to do. So I think Ellen's going to run for Congress. Margot is gonna keep doing what she's doing. I think a lot of those other folks are going to be too old to keep flying. So they're going to be, either administrative or, doing cons or, hanging out, talking to kids about whatever. And I think it's going to be interesting to see if, India and China get their act together and beat us to Mars. I think that would be an interesting
also,
thing.
we don't have enough new characters introduced for them to feel for us as part of the show.
True.
I mean, the youngest we have is the Mexican engineer. Yeah.
And a sexy soldier boy, sexy Sarah Lover there. Yeah. So
the big question is who's going to be president at this point? Did Al Gore, somehow scoot up a little sooner? I mean, we got to have something fun in there, right?
Yeah.
Huh. Could Biden, because Biden ran in 88, so maybe this is Biden becomes president in 88.
I really want to see how they save Molly. That's all I want. I mean, it's impossible, right? There is an impossibility, physical impossibility to save Molly, and yet I want to see that.
I'm sure she's going to do something where she's going to want to die in action, so she's gonna throw herself into something kind of stupid.
Yep, that's my fear too.
But how can she even be alive still? It's just, I don't know.
Well, she's just can't see, but she can. She'll still be able to. She's a smart lady.
They told the other guy who had more exposure, I suppose. Fine. Look, this has been fun. We're not done yet, right? I just I'll add another one after Karen spoke and put us on track for the next season. Don't you get so frustrated? Sorry, go ahead, Karen.
I would say I do want to mention one thing, which is that there is, if anybody's going to start watching the show, there's a podcast that for season 2. That's hosted by the actor who plays Danielle Poole.
Oh, wow.
So I do want to mention that that's out there for folks. I didn't know about it while I was watching it, but I definitely, my hope is to rewatch both season 1 and season 2 before season 3 drops eventually. And I do hope I'm going to listen to the podcast along with it when I'm rewatching.
Oh, cool.
Which connects me to, isn't it really frustrating that this is with all respect to them, Apple TV.
Yes.
So it would have been so famous if it was on Netflix.
Yes.
But again, Apple TV is doing their sci-fi push here. We have Foundation coming out in a couple months, which
I'm so worried about that.
We're worried about it, but it looks like they're spending the money on it. I'm kind of curious how much money they spent on this.
Yeah, I can't see that making a good TV, but
Yeah, agree. We'll look forward to be surprised, hopefully.
Yeah, let's do one final thing here. I would like to hear from our guests about what they're doing a little bit more. So, Rob, can you tell us about your upcoming book?
Yeah, I've got a book coming out in August. It's called 25 to Life. It's kind of a post-apocalyptic climate fiction kind of thing. Female character who lives in a world where she's not considered an adult until she's 25, and she decides to do something different and take to the roads while or after the big mission to Proxima Centauri leaves 9 billion people behind to die slowly on the planet. And I'm also working on an alt history, which will start coming out in 2022, which is actually an alt history of the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. So it kind of fits within the bounds of For All Mankind. So
awesome.
Hopefully there'll be a nod to For All Mankind somewhere in there. Like
Could
maybe
be.
Lenin will live, right?
Yeah.
Helen, what about Chicon? Anything interesting going on?
So many interesting things. So yeah, I'm chairing Chicon 8, which is the World Science Fiction Convention that will be held the first weekend of September of 2022, downtown Chicago. We have some really great guests. Charles DeLint is our author guest. Floyd Norman, who was the first African-American animator at Disney back in the 50s.
That's cool.
Charlie Jane Anders and Annalie Newitz are our Toastmasters. We have Earl Korshak coming. He helped run the very first Chicon in 1940. And is still around and just a font of history. But we've got all kinds of cool stuff coming. And I have to push and remind people that we do have a rate rise coming at the end of July. So now is the time to get your membership. But yeah, we're planning really cool stuff. The Hugo ceremony, the Chicago Costumers Guild is going to be helping us out the masquerade. We're going to have theater and music, and our program is going to be phenomenal. And I'm just.
And you're the chair.
And I'm the chair, so
that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to actually getting to the convention and just being able to hopefully sit back and go, all right, everybody do their thing.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I was gonna say optimism. I love the optimism.
Love my optimism, yeah.
Alex, maybe you can share something you have seen in VC Land, that horrible VC Land that you said, I wish I would have invested in that. If you can't tell us about what you actually are.
Oh man, I don't even know where to start. But for the benefit of folks watching, I'm a venture capitalist at Acme Capital. We do a lot of early stage investing in a lot of disruptive business models, but also a lot of really interesting deep technology. And we get to see all sorts of crazy stuff. I mean, one of the things, and even ties in here to the show just a little bit, is folks trying to innovate around nuclear right now, and a lot of interesting new nuclear technologies. And gee whiz, we could save the world and solve a lot of climate change issues and all of that if we just sped up allowing people to innovate with nuclear. And we're seeing a good gaggle of those sort of companies right now, kind of pushing the boundaries, which is cool.
All right, and I will end with actually Karen. You have heard us spamming you with spoilers for the past hour, and I just wonder what your thoughts are.
I mean, I'm actually quite excited to go watch this show. Like, I'm actually pretty likely to go downstairs after signing off and just start watching more of it. I mean, I'm sold. It's been an interesting experience. This has happened with our shows a lot. Like we do these every week or every other week. And some point early on, I was absolutely keeping up with. I would read whatever everybody on the show had written or worked on, and I've compared it to being force-fed delicious food that you do want to eat but comes too quickly. But I now I'm frequently doing the episode and then immediately after thinking, I really want to watch this or I really want to read it, and then I get excited and I want to talk to the people that we talk to about it. So that's what my day looks like.
Fair enough. I want to thank you all. Stay with us. We'll talk to you for a few minutes after the show, just to thank you and tell you how wonderful you are. But I want to thank our audience for putting up with us today as we're moving to this awesome StreamYard thing that just looks much, much better. And we appreciate you living with this as we are debugging and learning and growing. Thank you for your patience. I actually have notes prepared for me in advance, so I don't have to just say wrap up and thanks. If you enjoyed this show, you can subscribe on our website at www.essenceofwonder.com, and you can like us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch. We are now streaming. There is no more Zoom. We are no longer going to be hosting people here, but rather streaming it out. So this is going to be fun. And this was Essence of Wonder. We hope you had an excellent week, and we will see you soon. And that's a wrap.